Hi, I'm Josh. Today I'd like to talk to you all about something that's been bugging me for, let's say, about a year now. I'd like to say I'm a pretty big fan of tokusatsu, which is Japanese special effects shows, specifically the franchise known as Kamen Rider. The 22nd installment, Kamen Rider Fourze, is wrapping up this week, and it's safe to say I had a few problems with it. So what I'd like to do for the next few minutes is talk to you about my complaints, focusing in on 3 specific areas. 1, the hero, comparing history and motifs. 2, the secondary characters. And lastly, the overall gimmicks used this season. So if you'll bear with me, let's start. So for starters, let's get some base information out of the way on the plot. The setting is Amanagawa High School. Several students are being attacked by monsters known as Zodiarts, which are created by them pushing a Zodiart switch. 2 students, the loner, Kengo, and the hyperactive Yuki, are the only 2 people who are aware of this problem until Gentaro Kisaragi, a transfer student and Yuki's childhood friend, begins attending the school. In his quest to befriend every single possible individual, really he would befriend a dog if he could. He becomes aware of the problem and inevitably gains access to the Fourze driver, a device which allows him to become the hero, Kamen Rider Fourze, and fight these monsters. In the process of his fight, Gentaro, Kengo, and Yuki form a club consisting of other students to aid them in the uncovering of the monster's plot. Now just listening to this description, it doesn't sound all that bad. But the execution is highly questionable at best. So to go over what was so questionable, we'll start with our hero. In episode 2, a brief overview is given of what a Kamen Rider is. Put simply, a Kamen Rider is a masked hero who fights monsters. Now while this is not inaccurate, I'd like to say that after a history of 40 years, there's a lot more to the title than just that. In the early series, a main theme of a Kamen Rider's character is tragedy. Usually the main character / writer is the victim of a horrible life-changing turn of events, which usually results in the gaining of a writer's power. In recent series though, this has been traded in for dude gets a thing, becomes something flashy. And I believe that Gentaro turning into Fourze is a blatant example of this. From episode 1, Gentaro very easily comes into possession of not just the knowledge of the problem, but also the means to oppose said problem. Frankly, it's almost too easy. As for the character's motivation, it's mentioned that he lost his parents at a young age. Were this an older series, in the cases of Kamen Rider V3, X, or Black, this would be primary motivation that dealt directly with the character's path to becoming a writer. In Gentaro's case, his parents' death is covered so late in the series and glossed over so quickly, it's questionable why it was even brought up in the first place. From the exposition given, it is the primary reason for his character trait of friendliness and nothing more. I would argue that a character trait does not a full character make. From the beginning of the series to this last episode, I'd say Gentaro is without character arc, something that you need to care about him. If there isn't a reason for what he's doing, then why is he doing it? There should be more to being a Kamen Rider than a flashy belt and beating up bad guys. Personally, in the case of his death and awakening regarding the gaining of cosmic states, I didn't find it to be anything more than the required mid-season power-up episodes. Okay, so you're telling me he died, and he's lying on a table, but he's not really dead, right? Look, I get he's gonna wake up by the end of the episode, and he's gonna get a power-up. That's just how it works. But really, if you're gonna tell me friendship woke him up, brought him back from the dead, I don't care at this point. I'm not really buying it. I've seen a better example of friendship conquering death in the Pokemon movie, the first one.
Pikachu. Pikachu.
Alright, now let's move on to the supporting characters that make up the rest of the Kamen Rider Club. From as early as the first press conference, mention was made that the Fox series Glee was going to be an influence on the tone of the writing of the show. I was very happy to see this. What we got are 6 other characters that are so blatantly one-dimensional, one would be hard-pressed to find any substance at all. I've seen better displays of friendship in Yu-Gi-Oh! Quite plainly, we have the cheerleader, the jock, the goth, the flamboyant social butterfly, and not Bruce Lee. And really, that's all the information that you get about them over the course of 48 episodes. Given each character's 2-episode story arc at the very beginning of the series, that's about all the character development you get, save the table scrap here and there. When the cast list was first announced, it was noted that several of these names were portmanteaus of the original writer aliases. Based off that, one would imagine that these characters would act similar to the original characters. Sadly, this isn't the case. So let's take a look at them one by one. We'll start with Kengo Utahoshi. You rearrange his name and you get Hongo Takeshi, the namesake of the first writer. With a name that has so much weight, to only have him as a sickly loner who, surprise, was special the whole time, is kind of a letdown. The cheerleader, Miyu Kazushiro, gets her name from Kazumi Shiro, or Kamen Rider V3. This was a man who lost his whole family and swore revenge. In his place, we have the preppy, egotistical mean girl that couldn't possibly be mistaken for her predecessor. And I know English isn't your native language, but please, learn the proper usage of the word oops.
Oops.
Then you have the goth girl, Tomoko Nozama. If you take her name Nozama and spell it backwards, you get Amazon, obviously named after Kamen Rider Amazon. Honestly, she was actually the one member of the club I was cool with. On certain occasions, she was actually helpful. Next, there's the social butterfly JK, or Jake, whose initials are the same as Jin Keisuke, Kamen Rider X. He had a bit more growth towards the end of the series, but overall he comes off as a coward to me. Shun Daimonji, the jock, who, long story short, got his name from Ichimonji Hayato, Kamen Rider 2, couldn't act his way out of a paper bag every time he tried to emote. And that ding thing? It's not cool. It's an advertisement for a box of crackers. The actor portraying Kamen Rider Meteor went on record as saying that he based his characterization on Light Yagami from Death Note. And from the looks of it, so did the writers. He has the same hair color, school uniform color, and two-faced personality. Assisting Meteor is the character Tachibana, who gets his name from the mentor of the first 7 riders, Tachibana Tobe, affectionately referred to as Pops. This one's pretty simple. Take a character that fans came to know and love over the course of years, who was very helpful in the fight against evil, and replace him with a wishy-washy, late-revealed character with not one, but 2 secret identities. And last, you have Yuki Jojima. You take the ma out of the end of her name and you get Yuki Joji, the alias of the 4th writer, Rider Man. This was a man who, as a scientist, found himself on the wrong side of the fight between good and evil, and vowed to make amends for what he'd done, even going so far as to sacrifice himself by diverting a bomb that would have destroyed part of Japan. This Yuki is nowhere close. Her constant spazzy, annoying, hyperactive behavior is quite frankly the most annoying thing in the series. Now, I will concede that characters like her have appeared in earlier Rider series, but I would argue that none come anywhere close to how annoying Yuki is. Alright, now let's talk about the villains. As the story unfolds, we find that the administration of Amanagawa High School is behind and also leading the attacks on the students. Now, whereas this might sound like a bad situation, oh no, my students, oh no, my kids, if you actually pay attention to the events that unfold, really there is no problem. Over the course of the series, the plans and attacks of the monsters and villains have not resulted in a single fatality among any of the students attending the school. Even those thought to be dead were in fact hidden away to make it appear as though they were. This brings me to an overarching concept throughout every Rider series, even now, which is the idea of the villains in the series being a viable threat. In earlier series, going as far back as the original and as recent as last year's Kamen Rider O's, there was a tangible fatality count. In the first episodes alone of O's, there were dead people. It happened. In Fourze, it's nowhere near this big. It took 42 whole episodes for someone to die. 42 out of 48. That's almost the whole series. Now, I understand death isn't the only factor to go by, but you cannot argue it's a very tangible way of measuring a threat. And based off these numbers, I'm not threatened. Now, going back to the characters that make up the Kamen Rider Club, I cannot say enough that the style doesn't work here. Quite simply, they're caricatures. They act like this is a live-action anime. I really think this series would have worked better had it been an anime. A good example of this, or proof for it, is the Shin-Chan crossover. Now, if that's not enough proof right there, I'm gonna have to take it a step further. Okay, come on. Alright, I just said that Fourze should have been better as an anime. How am I gonna prove it? Magnets! I'm going to reenact the basic plot of Fourze again using the cast of School Rumble. Okay, let's see what we got here. Alright, you got your teachers, And okay, so you've got your lonely guy. This is Kengo. And you've got the hyperactive Yuki. Space, whatever. And then you get Gentaro. Hey, I'm Yuki's friend. I'll be friends with everybody. Yeah, alright. And they're like, hey, we got a problem going on. There's monsters at the school. Roar, monster. Oh no, monster. Here, belt. Put this on, do a thing. Alright, 3, 2, 1. And he's a Kamen Rider. And then, he's not a Kamen Rider because he fought the thing, and then dude's like, I got suspenders. I don't want to go to class. You should change your uniform. We don't have a uniform policy. Okay. And then, alright, we got those 3, and then we need the other members of the club. Okay, we need the cheerleader, and we need the jock, or, yeah, you'll be the jock. You'll be the jock, and then we need the shy girl, and then we need the flamboyant guy. Alright, there's all the members of the Rider Club, and what do you need? We need the lonely guy. Hey, I'm also a writer, and I like you, but I don't like you because I'm also a writer. I'm the blue writer. Okay, there we go. You know what? That makes more sense as magnet states. Okay, magnet states. Yay, friendship. Alright. You get the idea. And now we come to the most noticeable thing about any Rider series, which is the look and the gimmick. The setting of Kamen Rider Fourze does not exist in actual Japan. Now granted, this is a show that is fiction. However, to watch it, it's hard not to get the feel that the writers and producers wanted this to be set in America real bad. From the football team, to the cheerleaders' uniforms, to the various cliques seen in episode 1, it is visibly obvious that this is what they were going for. As far as the secondary portion of what the series is supposed to be themed on, which is space, this is also awfully done. Prime examples are seen throughout the series, such as the constant disregard for the effects of gravity, the visibility of a secret base on the bright side of the moon, and just common knowledge of how the vacuum of space works. They're everywhere. Now, I don't believe it's any secret that for the last few years running, Tokusatsu in general has been made by committee. What they do is design the toys first, and then come up with the plot later, because, let's not kid ourselves, this is a show that prides itself on toy sales. The implementation of these designs and devices is left up to the writing staff, but sometimes even the best writing can't make up for what is clearly child's play. So let's break the look down. Right off the bat, we can see that Fourze is themed off space and his being an astronaut. But I think it goes a little bit further than this. I present to you, the audience, the idea that Fourze was primarily based off Buzz Lightyear. Still don't believe me? Take a look at magnet states. And for good measure, let's take a look at Buzz Lightyear's spaceship. Notice anything familiar about the shape? I think that's pretty clear evidence. And then we have the food droids. Alright, admittedly, this idea is not new. It actually dates back to Kamen Rider Hibiki, who was the first writer to use helpful little robots. Back in 2005, this idea was original. Small helpful robots in the shape of a CD in a music-themed show made sense. But since then, the idea has been used again and again and again, and never with less effectiveness than in Fourze. Alright, let's be real for a second. You're in high school. Nobody believes that that's a real hot dog. That's not a real hamburger, that's not a shake, that's not a tray of nuggets. Those are toys. Now I understand how they're supposed to be used. The switches go in the toy, and that's how they work aside from the belt. But let's be honest, that's just another ploy to get you to buy the switches. It's a toy commercial. To top it all off, let's talk about that belt. Loud and clunky. If you don't believe this was designed for children, I've got one piece of evidence right here. To put it a certain way, if you're going to make a show based off an American sitcom and put it in an American-themed environment, just do that, and don't try to shoehorn it in with an already established franchise. I get that change is good, change is necessary, but after so many changes and alterations, you can become so far removed from what made the original great that it becomes altogether unrecognizable and a shell of what it used to be. A noisy, light-up, shiny 4,999 yen shell. Now granted, everyone needs an intro, and if Kamen Rider Fourze was your introduction to Kamen Rider, I'm sorry. Now, I know this is a matter of personal taste. I very much do care about this franchise, but that does not mean I have to blindly accept the product that's been put in front of me. It is not automatically awesome just because it bears the name of Kamen Rider. And I really tried to like this series. But there were just so many nitpicky things that kept popping up over and over again. If you watched, you've seen them. You know, little things like... Did you ever notice that Kamen Rider Meteor's helmet looks like the Final Fantasy VII logo? Or how they named Gintaro's attacks limit breaks? Did you notice that his arms and his legs were designed after PlayStations? How come nobody figured out that Ryusei was Meteor when his name translates directly into Meteor? Isn't this a high school? Shouldn't kids be worried about exams? How is it that a high school with no dress code has uniforms? Do you ever think about that there's an American high school football team, but they never mention the other teams they play? What happened to the people in a coma on the M bus? Are they dead? Now? Because there's nobody that's gonna come get them. They're still there. As far as Meteor's motivation, why would they give a switch to a student that was going to a school that wasn't directly underneath the hole? Or how the Billy the Rod weapon works just like Bane's mask in The Dark Knight Rises? It just plugs into itself? It shouldn't work like that! And how is it that a series that prides itself on being the 40th anniversary year and has a writer who's supposed to be about space, he never meets up with Super One, the original space writer, but they'll name a switch after him, but he never meets him? That doesn't make any sense! And don't you dare get me started on that last episode. Unless you want me to get started on that last episode, I mean, I could do that. But I digress. What I'm getting at is this. Based off what made the older installations great, I expected more from Fourze. Yes, I know what I said, I expected more from this children's television show. Flash is fine, but Flash with substance is better. And with Kamen Rider Wizard debuting soon, I do have high hopes that this installment will make me forget about the bad taste Fourze has left me with. So, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I didn't make too many people mad. I'm Josh, and I'm expecting more. You should too.